Hello students, Mr. John here. Welcome to Chapter 23, Lesson 4. Today we're learning all about the Industrial Revolution. You see, it all started when man started replacing muscle power and animal power with machine power. Slowly, over time, the machines became self-aware and have since enslaved the human race using Terminators and the Matrix. Wake up, people! So, okay, maybe that's not really what the Industrial Revolution was. But if the Industrial Revolution isn't a bunch of machines taking over humans, what is it, Mr. Young? Well, the Industrial Revolution actually was a time period when humans began to use machine power instead of human muscle power and animal power, and it all started in Britain in the 1700s, so we'll mostly focus on the reasons that it happened and the results. Tally-ho forward! Because it's Britain, and that's what they say over there. Okay, causes of industrialization. The causes of the Industrial Revolution are many, and together they created the perfect environment for technological advancement. So as you see, farming improved in the 1700s when small-time farmers began combining their land, creating more crops and more money. So before there were like property laws where you had a whole bunch of very teeny farms, and then the laws changed so that people could put their farms together to have a larger area, so they grew more crops more efficiently. So with the larger pastures, they could grow more, they could have more animals grazing, and so you ended up with more food and larger flocks of sheep, which produced wool, and this more wool would be used to feed the machines of industrialization, because the first industry was really in the textile industry. And when you think textile, think cloth, think wool, cotton, things like that. Alright, so with more crops to sell, farmers and merchants actually had more money to invest in things like, say, new methods of farming and creating goods, manufacturing. So with more food, you also get more people. So population increase meant that there was more people looking for work, and improvements in farming technology meant that there could be less farmers growing more food for more people. This surplus of workers would provide labor for, well, industry. Britain itself was also ripe with resources. Access to the ocean would give Britain access to trade and goods, and deposits of fossil fuels like coal and iron would feed the engines of industry. That brings us to some inventions. In the 1700s, James Hargreaves invented the spinning jenny. This device took cotton and it spun it into thread very quickly, much quicker than by hand. The thread could then in turn be turned to cloth quickly using the powered loom invented by Edmund Cartwright. The first powered textile equipment was water-powered, but water power was soon not enough. Textile factories switched to steam power in the late 1700s. The need for machines and machine parts actually led to more mining and manufacturing of steel, and improvements in steel production like the Bessemer process. It's detailed more in your book. Not a spinning jenny, an actual spinning jenny. Get it? Ha ha ha. Mr. Yund. Alright, hey, factories and steel. Industrialization was pushed along by new machines as well as more efficient farming, but it was also rolled along, pun coming, by new transportation methods such as the train and the steam engine. Get it? Rolling along? Oh boy. You might say industrialization just steamed along. Okay, I'm done now. Alright. So Robert Fulton invented the steam-powered boat in 1807. It was called the Clermont, and he was an American inventor. Those suckers, the steamboats, chugged around rivers and oceans twice as fast as sailboats. That meant people and goods were moving around on bodies of water twice as fast, which is always a good thing. On land, steam power really began to move trains safely in the mid-1800s. The earliest trains were around before the mid-1800s, like early 1800s, but they had a tendency to explode. And then you'd have boiling water and explosions everywhere. They were not very safe, but they improved. So by the mid-1800s, you had trains were safe, they were getting faster, and you had more train track laid. And so the price of moving goods was literally halved. I was just teaching in 8th grade that what used to cost like 2 cents a ton, which sounds really cheap to us, moved down to 3/4 of a cent per ton to move goods on trains. All right, there's Robert Fulton's steamship, the Claremont. All right, how about the factories themselves? Well, you'll remember that goods were originally made in homes. We called it the cottage industry. It was a vocab word we had. As people power was replaced with machines, the machines were too big for homes. And they needed water or steam power, and you certainly weren't fitting an early steam engine in Grandma's cottage. So special buildings were made near water sources, typically rivers, where these factories would be built. Factories brought the big machines and the laborers, the people, together to create more product. Now, factories were really expensive to start up. So people came up with new ways to pool their money. Sometimes a few guys would go in a factory, so you'd have multiple owners. The rise of factories created the concept of a corporation. We all heard of corporation. You think of like big office buildings and guys in suits. So what originally was a corporation is someone would be trying to collect money to start a factory, and he would sell shares of ownership of that factory to many people, and they might buy a little bit or they might buy a lot, and all that money would be used to open the factory, and then the profits of the factory had to be divided among all the owners. I mean, in a very simplified form, that is still what a corporation is today. When a brand new company comes out, like Amazon and Yahoo and Google, all these things that happened kind of a while ago now, they had a stock release. They went public, and then those parts of ownership were sold, and then depending on how well the company is doing, the stock goes up or down, and they might pay dividends. But now we're going off on a mystery tangent. All right, some stuff I added myself to the lesson. I call it some sneaky squirrel stuff. Your book doesn't talk about this, but you'll learn about it more next year, and it relates directly to what we're learning, so I decided to tell you about it. Britain was making buku bucks from the fact that they had textile factories and no one else did. Basically, they could make better cloth than everyone else, much faster and much cheaper, which means they were killing it. They had a very big competitive edge. And that was because of the factories and the technology that they kept very secret because they liked having that competitive edge. It's like Willy Wonka keeping his chocolate recipe secret, not letting Slugworth get it. That's how Britain guarded the secrets of her factories. And then you had this mechanic. He worked in a cotton mill in Britain. His name was Samuel Slater, and he heard the Americans wanted to know how this technology worked. They wanted in on the industrialization on factories. So he knew he'd never be able to sneak drawn plans, a piece of paper, there we go, my secret plans, to America. Customs would check them, and he wouldn't be able to hide it. So what he did was he memorized as much as he could in his noodle, in his noggin, and then he took all that information to the United States and ended up helping with the first mills. So that's how industrialization came to America. It was a secret, and Samuel Slater literally had to memorize how the machines worked. And then he came over and brought that knowledge with him. Pretty crazy. Alright, in addition to the invention of the steel plow, steam engines, and all that great stuff, you had even more great inventions that we still use today. Alexander Graham Bell developed the telephone in 1876. Electricity and light bulbs lit the world, thanks to Thomas Edison in 1877. You had the combustion engine in the 1880s, so like that's what your car uses, combustion engine. And don't forget that the Wright brothers and their flying machine in 1903, there's all kinds of things that were invented in this time period. I really glossed over them. If you read the section in the book, there's a little bit more in there. And that's important because that's your assignment for today. Pretty simple one. How many points did I make it worth? Maybe a 5. Yeah, because it's kind of just an opinion question. But let's see. We glossed over a lot of inventions today. The times, they are changing. They always do. But in the 1800s, whoa, lots of changes. Please answer the following question. with complete sentences. What invention from the lesson do you think was most important and why? So things we talked about: factory system, water-powered looms, spinning jennies, steam engines, steamboats, trains, planes, aeroplanes, combustion engine, telegraphs, telephone, electricity, light bulb, decimal process, radio, all these things. So you might want to look through the book, but we went over a lot in the lesson too. Just give me a few sentences on what and why. As long as you really pick one and write about it a little bit, you should get an easy 5 points. All right, that's it for today. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, have a glorious day.